say about
Yeah.
the speaker mapping, though, was that, you know as well as I do, okay, so going back to poor speaker placement, and those processors can't make up for poor speaker placement. And the one area that it really is going to hit you is multiple seats. So when we're talking about this stuff, we're often thinking about, or I do at least, I'm thinking of one seat because I'm more stereocentric. So I think it's worth kind of noting that the majority of people in the home theater audience should also be considering the other seats. So the way that those DSPs are making up for, you know, a non-ideal speaker placement is through level matching and time delay, right? We know that. But the problem comes that as soon as you add somebody else into the room and they're sitting next to you, well, everything is thrown off because that perfect placement is no longer there. So that's something else to maybe consider too. And it might be worthwhile if somebody's going to try to do, like even if FOMO, I don't know if he considered doing that, just try moving different seats. You know, I don't know if he just did one seated location or multiples or what. But
well, here's the funny thing, Aaron, is I have 4 theater seats, and most of the time it's just me. Most of the time,
yeah, I get it.
Me watching a video. They don't want to watch what I'm watching, so that's the truth. But I keep the 4 seats because it looks cool, right?
Yeah, I get it.
But so I think it's interesting because you are a car audio guy that you used to be hardcore into that, and those speakers are very weird places, right?
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
like not in the optimal place. So does that kind of remapping make sense though? Like what would be the best way to have a stereo image that's accurate? So meaning if something's supposed to be 45 degrees to the left, but your speaker is not 45 degrees, it's like right in front of you, kind of, right? If you're in the driver's seat, right? It's kind of like slightly to the left, but not 45 degrees. What's the best way to approach that so that it sounds correct? Like the angle.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw an old video of you doing the Rebecca Pigeon thing, and like you had this thing showing the angle, like the where stuff is supposed to come from. Okay, so how do you do that when you don't have a speaker where it's supposed to be?
I mean, the real truth of it is you can't. So that's when you get into crazy DSP and adding multiple speakers and doing spatial effects and things like that, then it makes it a little bit easier, especially when you've got a center channel to anchor things. But if you're talking about like stereo and you need to be dead in the center of the 2 speakers, you're not going to make the soundstage, for example, wider than the physical placement of the speaker, other than through reflections, right? So you can maybe do some weird stuff, possibly like turning your speakers completely off axis, facing the reflection point, and adding a secondary a point source, right? So a point source is anywhere that the sound originates from. And the ideal point source is one speaker that covers 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. That's the ideal speaker, ideal point source. And in car audio, if you want to have a sound on the driver's side sound like it's wider than the driver's side, well, good luck, right? Because you can't really put the speaker any further out than like the A-pillar or the door or something like that. So the next best thing you could do is find a speaker that's highly directive, put it in the center of the car, maybe aim it toward where you want it to bounce off of, and have a reflection be that point source.
So like that soundbar.
That's not realistic. Possibly, but see, the thing about the soundbars that bother me when y'all were talking about earlier, and it's always bothered me, is they're not highly directive. Like we know that low frequencies radiate more widely, more omnidirectional, and then usually, depending on the size of the speaker, let's say anywhere from like 200 to 500 hertz, it's going to start to become more narrow, and then you get like to maybe, let's say, 1 kilohertz, it's more forward firing, and then by about 8 kilohertz, it's pretty much within a cone of like plus or minus maybe 60 degrees or 30 degrees, depending on the tweeter type, right? So as you get higher in frequency, it starts to narrow up, but at the mid-range frequencies, it's still radiating all around that speaker. So I never really understood when people talk about, well, we just do it via reflections. We're going to bounce the sound off this sidewall. Well, no, you're not. It's still going to originate from the drive unit itself, from that little 2-inch mid-range or whatever they're using. It's still going to come from there. Now, the high frequencies may bounce off the side, but those low mid frequencies are coming from that soundbar. And that's what I don't understand about that logic of things. And I played around with those soundbars, and I kind of get it. I mean, to me, they're kind of gimmicky, if I'm being honest. They work to some degree, but I think a lot of it is purely based on psychoacoustics, which is great for them. That's what they're that's what they say they do. The majority of them, like the old Yamaha, that was huge. You guys remember that thing? It was like 6 or 8 inches tall, and it had like
Bunch
a
of drivers.
huge array of like 2 or 1 inch drivers. You know, it was just nuts. That thing was cool, but you can't tell me that it would truly replace a legitimate like home theater with 11 channels of surround sound. It's not going to do that. I don't care what they say, right? Like it's just not, because the sound originates from that sound bar at the low to mid frequencies for certain. That's not debatable. That is 100% fact.
Precedence.
So yes, exactly. So you're going to hear that sound, and then you're going to hear the reflective sound later. But and the other thing too is a lot of those use smaller drivers. So like a 2-inch driver, speed of sound divided by like 2 inches. Let's just say that's 6,000. Okay, so it's going to be like 6,000 hertz before it really starts to become pretty focused. So that means you got all the way up to the mid treble, and that sound is not going to be directional, or it's not going to be pointed right at the wall and bouncing off that. So it's going to sound like it's coming from the sound bar. So again, you're left with almost a stereo or a monaural source right in front of you.
Yeah, and Chris Wyndham, you are right. It was Spanish Harlem, by the way.
Spanish Harlem. Yep.
That is correct. Oh, so would it make sense though? Let's say if you had in a car, of course you don't, but if you had a supporting surround speaker, like a wide speaker to your, to your direct left, I guess you could say,
like in a B pillar almost,
something like that, right? A supporting speaker, kind of like how you're saying the center channel can support the stereo image by just telling you where middle is at least.
Right.
Would it make sense to kind of do what I was saying earlier, though, is saying, hey, this left speaker is not playing actual left. It's more like center left-ish. And use the other speaker to kind of like, all right, this is like very left. And if you need left, put it somewhere in between both of these. That'll get you the right angle.
Right. So, yeah, I see what you're talking about. I've done something similar to that where I put speakers in the B pillars. I've also done where I've put speakers in the headrest right behind each ear and then use that to cancel out the...
You're next level.
Fancy, man.
That's crazy.
That's fancy.
And so which one worked best of those two? You there? Oh,
may have lost him.
Yeah, may have lost him. I'm just kind of curious which one of
There he
those
is.
two
Sorry.
worked. Yeah. Which one of those two worked best, or what worked well and what didn't?
Right. So what I did at one point in time was I put 2 speakers in the headrest, one behind each ear. And this was just me playing around with stuff. And I was trying to go for intraoral crosstalk cancellation, basically. So in car audio, the real issue you have is you're not seated in the center of the car. So you lose that true plus minus 30 degrees stereo separation, which means that on the driver's side, that speaker is usually it's like maybe 15 degrees off axis, like to the left. And so that's about the widest the sound is going to be off to the left. But on the right side, it could be like 45 or 60 degrees. So generally speaking, and this is like a decade plus of car audio experience, like what you wind up having is in terms of soundstage with time alignment, with DSP using equalization and levels to match between sides, you can put the vocalist in the center of the car on the dash. But
cut out. You could put the vocalist in the center of the dash. Hopefully he comes back.
Right.
We lost you you can put the vocalist in the center of the dash.
He's on his BMX right now.
Yeah, I'm on my BMX right now. That's what it is.
He's up on a ramp.
Yeah, sorry. So you can put the vocalist in the center of the dash, and the soundstage on the right is going to sound further than the soundstage on the left. So the best thing you can do on the left is physically like move the pillar out. Like that's all you can do. You can't get wider than where the physical speaker is, because there's no reflection to help increase the ambiance from that soundstage on the left, right? Because your speaker is already against that boundary, but you can't do anything else about it. That's it physically. So yeah, I'm trying to dumb it down a little bit because I keep going in and out.
No,
that's kind of
we're kind of making fun of the headrest idea, like Pontiac Fiero had it back in the day. The Miata had the headrest speakers.
The idea, what kills your stereo sense of stereo in the car is the left side, because, okay, so let's say that you're looking dead at a speaker. Let's say it's right in front of you, right?
Mhm.
Well, there's no stereo because both ears hear the same sound at the exact same time in the same
Right.
way, right? But
Mhm.
when you put a stereo in, because of intraoral crosstalk, that's kind of what gives you that phantom stereo. But as you
Gotcha.
move side to side, one ear starts to hear more of a speaker. So, for example, if you're back on the driver's side of the car, then your left ear, or I'm sorry, your left driver, your left, let's say mid range, both ears are going to hear that almost the same because that angle is it's not 30 degrees anymore. It's like 15 degrees or maybe 10 degrees.
That makes
Now
sense.
the other speaker on the opposite side of you, that's pretty much your right ear is hearing that completely different than your left ear because your head is blocking so much sound that goes to your left ear. They
Right.
sound completely different. So that's what causing a lot of weird stuff to go on in the car. So to kind of overcome that, what I was trying to do with the left speaker was I was trying to send my right ear the opposite signal that it was hearing from the left speaker via the
Oh, yeah.
headrest speaker, and then doing the same thing with the left speaker. I was trying to cancel out so it would give me a sense of bigger soundstage width. Now, I'll tell you guys, it worked, but as soon as you moved your head just a tad, I mean, it didn't matter, it did like super small, it changed everything. I mean, your head has to be in a vice for it to work. Because as soon as you move your head, all the reflections and the direct sound and everything changes. It goes out the window. You see what I'm
Got
saying?
it.
So,
You know,
I say all that to say it's a neat idea, but how feasible is it realistically? I don't know. But there's cars that had those, and then like Dirac has stereo systems or multi-channel audio systems in cars. Those are the ones that I find interesting, and I'd be curious to know how they work because they got like legit engineers on that stuff. I was just playing like with different signal, like
Yeah,
left
so
minus
that's
right,
very
stuff like that.
very, very interesting stuff. It's kind of funny that, you know, when it comes to car audio, you're all about, you know, you're all about that, right? And so it's kind of the same exact conversation that Chana and I were having with the height speaker for Atmos. It's like when there's not a speaker there, right? That's you can't make it sound like it's there. It's going to be very difficult to do that. And that's all we've been just trying to say is like, if your speaker's here, it plays a direct sound and that tells you where the speaker is. And so it's hard to kind of get around that. And, you know, I think a lot of people are mistaken. They think that you can just make the sound go anywhere if you have enough speakers. Kind of, but not really. You know, it's very difficult
Or like
to put
Dolby
sound where
Atmos height
where speakers are not.
virtualization.
I've been trying that. I've actually been messing around with that. Have you?
No.
Yeah, so I have 5.1 in here, like right here. I have a back speaker. And I just been messing with it, and it has an effect. You know, you may want to check it out. I know you like to experiment. It has an effect, and it's starting to make me think that height is more about a change in the higher frequencies. The change in tonality really tells your brain it's up there. So, like for example, if I watch something with helicopters or an airplane where it's recorded well, where it's recorded with, you know, the thing coming, you know, overhead.
Yeah.
Even if with no height, my brain kind of just says that's probably up there because of the sound, the tonality of it.
Huh.
So it's very interesting how that works. What if we didn't actually need height speakers? No, you do. So yeah, all the stuff that we're all finding out, I think is really interesting just through experiments. Make sure to join us every Monday for our live stream at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Daily HiFi.